I'm Scott Al Miller. It is the 3rd of March, 2023, and this is my vlog of daily life in León, Nicaragua. And today we're going to be talking about the thing that people have been requesting, surprisingly, way more than I expected. We're going to be talking about what is it that I do right after the bump. All right, welcome to today's show. I've gotten a number of requests recently. First of all, today's Friday, work stuff, like whatever. Okay, I've gotten a number of requests about that specific topic. What is it that I do for work? Because obviously I live and work here in Nicaragua and I do a lot of things, and obviously I vlog and whatever, and people have asked quite a bit, what is it I actually do? Because it's not very clear, and so that's what we're gonna be covering on today's show. This is not a subject I was expecting to ever cover. I don't know why this is interesting, but I suppose it makes sense. I actually do a lot of things. So this is gonna be a little bit odd. So first of all, obviously I'm a vlogger and I do this every day. For those who follow my show, you are aware that I do this literally more than once a day. I turn out a lot of material. That takes a bit of time and it does bring in a small amount of revenue, but it is an absolutely tiny amount of revenue and it doesn't actually cover the cost of doing the show. So technically, if I stopped doing the show, I would have more money at this point. I think in a year that will probably shift and it will make an absolutely tiny amount of money rather than losing a relatively small amount of money. But between needing motion VFX graphics and needing music from Epidemic Sound and Artlist, it adds up and it's just a tiny bit of a loss, especially once you consider that I'm buying a new camera from time to time. That's really the killer cost. So when you add all that up, it is a loss, but thanks to people going to buymeacoffee.com/Scott Al Miller and donating, it helps to offset that as much as possible. For those who are wondering at this point, with this number of subscribers and this amount of traffic, which is a lot, we're pushing 4,000 hours of view per month. The show brings in from YouTube just over $100 a month. Sounds like, hey, that's pretty good, except when you consider that a camera for the show is $500 and I need one about every year because I wear it out doing the show so much. I have to have a computer to work on, I have to have a desk, I have to have the motion VFX graphics, Epidemic Sound and Artlist. Those things are monthly cost or at least annual subscriptions. That stuff really does add up and creates a loss. But once we hit about 5,000 to 6,000 subscribers, if we keep at this pace, that should reverse. And so we can think of it a little bit as an investment. But those of you who are going to buy me a coffee, that really does do quite a bit to offset any losses. So thank you so much for all of you who do that. I got my career started in IT, and my current company that I work for, NTG, I actually started in 1999 when I was 22 years old. And that is where I've been for the last quarter century. We are a technology outsourcing and advisory firm. So we do a lot of business and technology advisory across all spectrums. We help little companies like 1- and 2-person businesses, medical clinics, manufacturing firms, all the way up to giant Fortune 100 companies where we do almost anything you could imagine, from managing email or handling security, doing CIO advisement or whatever. We're an extremely high-end IT consulting firm, and we work often in very consulting sort of roles, but we also handle things like customer service calls or simply doing password resets, helping people manage Windows Server. So we run the gamut, which is really a unique offering, and it's really cool. So at our core, our main business is completely outsourcing IT departments. So if you're a small or medium business, you would come to someone like us and say, oh, I'm in need of an entire department. I don't have my own IT people. I need a company who's able to do all of that. And unlike a lot of companies who kind of pretend like they do that, we actually do. We work in IT. We're not resellers who are just supporting products that we sold, which may sound okay until you realize the biggest component of IT is advising people on what to buy. If we were selling it, that would mean we were not in a position to also be advising in what to buy, because we would be being paid based on what you bought. It's much like the discussions I have with buyers and sellers agents in real estate. If you are the seller's agent, you can't also be the buyer's agent. You can't represent both parties. Well, sellers and resellers in IT represent the vendors. They get paid by selling you things you wouldn't have bought otherwise, essentially things that you don't actually need. If you needed them, you don't need the salesperson. The IT people would have driven you to that. IT are like buyer's agents. They represent the interest of the customer. Seller's agents or resellers represent the interest of the vendors. And so, but there's a really big trend towards, accidentally perhaps, hiring the seller's agents, the actual salespeople, to be your IT people, and you end up with either people who are directly working for vendors or people whose only experience is in sales and working for vendors, who then have no idea that going with the big brand name is actually a terrible idea and a horrible way to make a business decision, because it's all they know is what big box stores are able to move, and they don't know how to do IT evaluation. They don't know how to look at the big picture. They don't know how to look at producing their own solutions versus simply having a vendor provide a solution for them, which happens to be selling them a bunch of things, most of which they probably don't need. So we're an actual IT department. And so if you have a company, for example, and you have a need for, wow, I really want an IT department that provides me a complete range of skills of what I might need today, but also a complete range of skills of what I might need tomorrow, plus all the skills to help me decide what skills I need to be using, you can come to a company like ours, like NTG, and say, oh, I just need an entire department. And generally that's going to be a tiny fraction of what you think an IT department would cost. Internal IT departments often cost 5 to 10 times as much as a proper outsourced one. But because most people compare insourced IT departments to outsourced salespeople who are just going for every dollar they can get, they get a view that outsource is going to be expensive or not provide the same level of value. But it's because they didn't actually outsource IT. They actually threw IT to the wolves and let the wolves come right in the front door and work to sell them whatever big name thing they could do, get free vacations for pushing whatever product, whatever. So we're that company. We're the ones that can be brought in. If you have an actual IT department and they simply don't have all the resources that they need to do their work, maybe they're short-staffed, maybe they lack specific skills, maybe they can handle the CIO consulting but can't handle the customer service type stuff, the help desk, maybe they can do the opposite. They can do help desk, but they don't know how to advise a CEO on the business decisions around technology and information infrastructure in their business. They can bring in someone like NTG and we'll fill in the gaps. And should people decide to retire or move on, they have a natural handover process. They don't have to worry about going out and necessarily finding another company. So those things. And some companies simply have very specific things. It's not just filling in all gaps or certain layers. Some companies simply have one technical thing. Maybe they need someone who's going to manage their websites, for example. Well, we have all the skills we need, but we don't want to be bothered with the website. That's something, it's different than the other stuff we do. Can you do this one thing? Absolutely, we do that one thing. So we cover the entire gamut. We're also an MSP builder. If you're familiar with the industry, MSPs or managed service providers is the normal path to offering these types of services. We're slightly different. We're called an ITSP. The difference is an MSP predefines the services that they offer and they attempt to standardize, and ITSPs do not predefine and attempt to change themselves to meet the needs of the client. Both have value, they're just different approaches. We're an MSP builder, so as an ITSP, we adapt ourselves to whatever our customers' needs, and our customers may be these MSPs. So if you were interested in starting your own MSP, for example, or maybe you have an MSP and it's just you and a buddy and you don't have enough resources, you can come to us at NTG and say, look, Scott, I want to build my own MSP. I'd like it to be up and running by tomorrow. What can we do? And we can sit down and say, what kind of MSP do you want? How do you want to bill? How do you want to interface with clients? What ticketing system do you want to use? What kind of software do you want to use? What do you want to support? What technology stacks do you want to be part of your wheelhouse? What is your service offering? What kind of customers do you want to go after? And we can put together all the back end, either with stuff we already have, or we can assemble a new back end that's customized for you and have you up and running in as little as a day with an entire company that could take you decades to build on your own with all kinds of expertise that covers whatever you need. And if you decide to change over time, today we're a Windows shop, but in the future we decided to become a Mac shop, no problem. We have those resources. You can change just like our regular customers can. Or you could grow. You start today, you're only handling small clients, but tomorrow you want to go after Wall Street clients, you want to go after hospitals. Great, we do all that stuff. And we've been doing both software and IT for big business, whether it's federal government or Fortune 100 or university research hospitals, since the 90s. This is not new stuff for us. We've been doing all these things. We've been covering all the bases and at points we've been our own email company. Right now, yeah, Google and Microsoft and Zoho own that market. There's no room for smaller players, but there was a time when there was, and we were one of those players for a decade. We are our own web hosting company. If you're looking for commercial web hosting, we do that, and we're pretty proud of the work we do. We do it differently than most places, and we offer some really high-end stuff, but it's still at incredibly affordable prices. For those who are watching my show, if you are looking for highly skilled, really high-quality web hosting for your business, it's only $15 a month to get started. Seriously, you can get it. Yes, that's 3 times the cost of most of the providers, but they throw you to the wolves. They expect you to have an IT department that fills in the gaps and does the pieces they don't do. We do all the pieces. So that's why it costs 3 times as much, but it's pretty affordable. Good IT should be very affordable. In fact, correct IT always makes financial sense. That's what makes it the correct IT. If it didn't make sense, then it shouldn't be IT, because IT is part of a business function, right? So this is one of those things that people don't understand. I'm just starting to get the sun just perfectly in my face. One of the things that people often think is that IT costs money and doing IT better costs more money, and therefore if you don't have enough money, you can't afford to do IT well, so you should do it poorly. That is absolutely crazy business thinking, because doing IT well means making more money by definition. Right? That is the only thing that defines doing IT well or poorly, is how much money you make and or save to do it well, or lose or spend to do it poorly. So when someone says, I don't have the money to do it well, they're saying, I don't have enough money to make money. I'm too poor to be profitable, to try to be profitable. And so that's one of the things that happens. And so companies often go and say, well, I'm going to go with this lesser IT company. They don't have the skills, they don't have the mindset, they're not concerned about my business, but I'm going to go to them because they're cheaper. And they end up costing 2 or 3 or 4 times as much, but because they're not a good IT company, maybe they're not even an IT company, often they don't have the wherewithal to know what decisions you're making. And businesses making that size of a mistake, right, not understanding what IT even is, or they would never have made that decision because it's nonsensical. Having that mistake, they also have the problem that they can't evaluate what good looks like or how well their IT is done. So they'll say, well, my email works, so it must be a good decision. And they don't look at, oh, if I'd gone with this other company, my email might work better, my staff might be more efficient, I might be more secure, and I might have an email budget that's only 20% what I'm paying. Often that's what we find is companies overpaying for the services 400 or 500%, and they're saving 5 or 10% on the per hour staff or whatever, because they don't realize that the thing that they're paying for is the ability of the staff to reduce all of the cost, right? And to get just the pieces that they need at the right time. So those are all the things that we do. And so of specific services that we do that may be interesting to my audience, we do web hosting. We are our own telephone company and have been for 22 years. So if you have a business, even if you're just real small, just have 1 or 2 users, yeah, we're not going to be anything special, but feel free to give us a call. But if you have 5 or 10 or 20 or 100 users in your company, we'd love to talk to you about phones. We've been doing this for a long time. Our customers love us. We're really proud of the work that we do. And it's a lot of fun. And trust me, every single time I talk to a customer, a potential customer, they always become a real customer, and we're always saving them money. It always costs less to do it really well than it costs to do it kind of well, right? I don't know why that is, but doing the best job, getting the absolute best service with the best customer satisfaction, with the best support, it's probably going to be only 80% the cost of just going to the random consumer place and being like, I'm going to do it cheap. That's always more expensive. Not just in the long run with like, oh, now I don't have the support I need, whatever. No, it's the monthly bill is almost always larger, and people just aren't evaluating it and don't realize that they're spending $1,000 a month when they should be spending $400 a month. Those are big numbers we're often seeing, and people will say for years, no, I can't evaluate. I'm getting such a good deal. There's no way I could look. And at the moment that they look at a good service, all the good services we know are within a pretty small margin. Everybody who doesn't want to evaluate seems to always be paying 200 or 300% more than what a better service would be, and they lose tons of money for years. My all-time record is I one time worked with a small manufacturing company who swore there was no way they could afford to make the switch, and by switching, we dropped their costs from over $1,400 a month to under $50 a month overnight. The entire investment to make the switch was under $1,000, so it took them between 2 and 3 weeks. Within a single pay period, they managed to cover the entire cost of all the new hardware that they needed, and then were saved several $100s in their first month, and we're saving almost $1,400, about $1,350, $1,360 per month forever. For the 10 years that they missed that, they lost something like $100,000 in a 12-person company, 14-person company. $100,000 thrown away because they refused to evaluate their IT needs around just their phones. One thing. And those things can be really amazing, and taking the time to look at that can be really big. So that's what NTG primarily does as a business. We also have other divisions and do things like outsourcing of customer service representatives. So if it's you're working a business and you need someone who's going to answer phones or do paperwork or stuff like that, and they don't need to sit in your office, because we do computer work, and we know exactly how to support remote workers. We know how to make them functional from abroad. We know how to give them phones that work anywhere. I work from here in Nicaragua. I have a phone from the US and it works perfectly. No one can tell I'm not in the US, and I can go into real deep discussions about why that is and exactly how we measure that and how much better it often works for us here than our customers in the US work, because we have better internet here, right? We provide remote staff that are able to do reception or bookkeeping or whatever from here in Nicaragua or from our other offices. We are based as a company. We are headquartered in Denton, Texas, which is Dallas for those who don't know. The University of North Texas is at Denton, which is kind of northwest of Dallas proper. So it's in the Dallas metro, but it is a small separate university town on its own. And that is our official headquarters, and we are based in Texas. Our main offices for executives is here in León, Nicaragua. We have a large operational group throughout the country. We have people in Bolivia, in places like La Paz and Cochabamba, and we have people in Mexico, primarily in Mérida, but also in Guadalajara. And so we are all over the place. We have been in the past in Guatemala and also in Panama City, but at this time we don't have any people that are there. We work all across those regions, and really are passionate about providing amazing customer service and amazing IT solutions, and really being the company that people have been looking for and didn't know how to identify and how to find. And we've done that for a really long time. To support that, I do a lot of educational and writing things. So I have my own YouTube channel. This is how I got started in YouTube, was long ago doing an IT educational channel where I taught the things in IT that nobody teaches. Sure, there's a little bit of like how Linux works or when to choose Windows and some fairly basic educational things, when to choose this career path over another, but I also teach really deep things that are often overlooked, like understanding the approaches to selecting a service provider, how you should be looking at an SLA, things that CEOs need to be watching. And so I do this really broad education because these things are part of IT. Most IT firms are skipping them, and people who are looking for an IT education are often unable to find resources because universities lack the ability to teach these things. I have taught at university, I have taught at high school, I've covered the educational ranges. I did my undergrad work long after being in the industry. I was a classical guitarist when I was young, which is one of those things that people don't know about me. When I went to university, initially was for manufacturing systems engineering. I absolutely hated that. Did work in the field for a little while, put in a couple years, hated it, switched to classical guitar and concert trombone as my majors. I also had I had a triple major with voice, and I am, right after I do this video, heading out to do karaoke with some friends tonight from the channel. Rick is coming with Chris and Marcella and Dominica and myself for karaoke this evening. So we're doing that, and with a minor in piano, right? So I was very, very busy at university, and I got a corporate job playing classical guitar for many years in upstate New York, which was absolutely fantastic. It's one of those amazing career things that I got to do. I also, at one point, was a newspaper photographer. I've managed restaurants, I've managed hotels, all things that led me to where I am now, here in Nicaragua with a hospitality group attempting to run hotels and restaurants and bars and the like. So that is the big core of what I do. I do other things. I get involved in marketing and branding, website design. We do all those things as a business. So I'm in every possible realm every day. It's a nonstop jumping from media creation to IT advisory to training my own staff to working in customer service to translating things, making websites, helping with marketing campaigns, you name it. I cover the gamut, and it seems crazy that I do so many things, but this is what I've always done. Because I started my own business so young, I had to have my hands in every aspect of the business. And I grew with that over the years, and that small company that we started in upstate New York, within its first year, got into the university hospital software game. We were the first company to make cloud software for hospitals, for human medical, and we still have that software on the market today. We do advisory across financial. We've been on Wall Street, hedge fund row, worked for state, local, federal, indigenous governments, all in the United States, and manufacturing, and just every industry you could possibly imagine. Pretty much, we've been involved at some point, and because of that, and because I've run my own companies for basically my entire life. I crossed the threshold this year. I have now worked for myself. I've had my own companies and worked full-time for them for the majority of my life. I long ago passed the majority of my adulthood number. I'm now at the majority of my life. I have worked for myself. That gives me a lot of insight into the inner workings of companies and how different things come together. And because of the kind of person I am, I put a lot of time thinking about how things should work, and what good looks like, and why businesses work the way that they do, and why they approach things the way that they do, and how they should be approaching things, and how they should be thinking about things. And so I bring a lot of that to the table, and those are things that most people don't do. So that's my specific kind of specialty, and because of my time on Wall Street and that stuff, I have a very deep training and experience in things like risk analysis, which are huge portions of just basic IT, right? Any type of business decision is a risk decision, right? Well, we're going to put in this new server. Well, should we? Right? Well, what are the risks of that? Well, are we putting in a physical one? What do we have to think about? Are we going to go out of business? Are we going to sell the company? Or there's all these things that could happen. We need to evaluate what risks actually make sense, which ones are realistic, which ones are we actually potentially affected by, how do we gauge that when we're making our decisions. All those things are things that I do and help businesses do every day. In the last 2 years, I finally got an opportunity to sit down, take some time away. I've done an amazing amount of writing and videos and training and conference speaking throughout my years. I've written, I have over 150 certifications in the industry. I have written over a dozen certifications. I one time took a job where they made me go through a certification evaluation for the job, and I had to say, I'm like, look, full disclosure, I'm the author of the test you're giving me. And they're like, yeah, whatever, you still have to take it. And I took the test, and obviously I scored really well, right? That's not a statement as to how good I am. Obviously I knew my own answers, right? And they're done, and they were like really amazed. They're like, you scored higher than anyone we've ever known. I'm like, right? Were you expecting me to do poorly on my own test? What were you? But it was a really funny thing that came up. Like that I was given my own test to evaluate myself was hilarious and makes for a great story. So I've written more than 12 industry certifications. I was ranked for much of my career through the certification process. I have spoken at a number of conferences over a long period of time. I've hosted my own conferences a few times. I really have done just about everything, and I've written more than 500,000 posts in professional review communities, helping to ask and answer questions, delve into the thought processes behind different problem solving within IT and so forth. So I'm very proud of the work that I've done in that format. But in 2021, I finally got a chance to sit down and do one of the things that I've been missing for a really long time. In 2021, I finally got the chance to sit down, take a year off, work with Pact Publishing, and I wrote a book. This is Linux Administration Best Practices from Pact Publishing. It is available on Amazon. It is available on Pact's website. I have an ISBN number. I am an official author, not just an author of something that I self-published, which is itself a big accomplishment, but having a fully published book from a major publisher for the industry, one that I really respect, and got to go through that entire process of working with editors and the actual publishers and executive editors and assistants and marketing people and everything. It was an amazing experience, getting this done. It was also an incredible amount of work. I'm really proud of this book. This is, importantly, Linux Administration Best Practices, which is different than a lot of the books that have been on the market. There's no one else writing a best practices book for the industry. I've looked. None of that exists. This is an area that I really specialize in, is in providing best practices across the industry, because that's the kind of person I am. That's where I really kind of focus in IT, that I spend my time thinking about how we should approach things, how we should think about things. Like I said, that stuff, that leads to best practices. I understand why, not just in many circles, it is, well, we memorize what we do, right? At this company, we use this product and we use it in this way, and this is the configuration we use. And often it's handed down from on high, and often they got it from a vendor. They don't know why they made the choices that they did, or it was made sometime in the murky past, and they don't know what leads those decisions to change over time. And in my approach to IT and in the work that I've done throughout my career and in writing a book like this, I help dive into actually making those decisions, not just, do we choose this hypervisor or that operating system or this configuration for those things, but I go into what factors would make us choose those things. How do we think about it? And given those things, when you know those things, you then know how to apply them over time. You'll know when they change. You'll know when industry factors change, when market factors change, when prices change, when technology advances, that you can take that information, that general best practice information, and say, the best practices have not changed. They never change. Right? Everything I learned, basically I learned in the 1990s. I have not had to update because I learned best practices, because I learned how things work. And that's what I try to bring to people today, is this level of kind of collegiate education that was really prevalent in the 1990s, and by the 2000s was gone. And so most people working in the field today are working by having memorized assumed answers that were developed during the 1990s. And often that information is outdated or wrong, because the original information was correct. It was a best practice. But by the time it got relayed throughout the decades, they stopped relaying the thought process and just started relaying what was the resultant answer at the time. So a great example is, and I don't want to get too technical, but RAID levels in the late 1990s, because of how expensive hard drives were, because of how much space we needed, how little was available, RAID 5 was a common configuration that people would arrive at that they needed for servers. It was the only thing that they could afford that was practical. Years later, when drives got bigger and prices changed, RAID 5 became increasingly dangerous due to the large size of the drives, and became impractical because it was no longer needed to have such large arrays. People didn't know that they needed to change that thinking, but had they learned why they were choosing RAID 5 and applied the logic each time, they would have naturally seen the transition take place over time and say, the same decision process that I used that drove me to RAID 5 in 1999, in 2005 drove me away from it, right? That kind of, if you learn why, you don't have to memorize the answers. You'll derive the same answer over and over again, given the same set of inputs. And so finding the idempotent approach to IT is really important, because it really should be. It should not be a guessing game. It shouldn't be just, I saw what somebody else said. I don't know why they said it, and I'm assuming what they said will also apply to me, without obviously actually evaluating. How do you know? You just don't. You're just guessing. Right? And I think a lot of IT shows that you can just guess and things will work, right? But if you want to get it right, you want to make it really good, you can't guess. You got to know, because that's where you get the advantage, right? Companies that don't do a good job, they'll still function, but they're going to be at a huge disadvantage. The one competitor who says, you know what, we're going to, we don't know if we can compete in everything else that we do, but we can compete in the IT. We can take that seriously. And that will give them this huge advantage. And they can have so many more mistakes everywhere else, because they have this huge core advantage to their overall business functionality, the way that they approach decision making. And that's huge. I once was brought into a company in Arizona just to teach them decision making, because they were making random, crazy decisions. And when we sat down, you'd be like, okay, so what thought process brought you to this decision that you made? And they would tell me. And okay, so you have this other decision. What thought process got you there? And the thought processes were reversed. One was like, let's do whatever's popular and not evaluate if it works. Let's just do names we think, and it wasn't even popular. It was, let's do things that in our very limited exposure outside of the industry, these are things that we feel have been advertised to us. That was the logic. And then the other one, it was, let's carefully evaluate what's going to work well for us. And these were very opposing concepts. One said that marketing mattered more than results. And the other said results mattered and marketing didn't. And both may have some value, but the inconsistency meant that they didn't believe themselves. And I said, why did you do one thing in one case and the opposite in the other? What drove you to change your core decision making? And they couldn't even, the president of the company couldn't even understand the question. He kept saying, well, just tell me the answer you want me to say. And I'm like, I don't want to know the answer. I want to know how you're making decisions. And it was so foreign to them to actually evaluate their job. They were only looking at the results of their job. Did we come up with a decision? And did that decision work? And the answer was the decision almost never worked. They actually came up with decisions that couldn't do the job because they were so wildly not evaluating anything. But besides that, they never evaluated if the resulting answers were good or bad, only that they existed. And the idea that they could improve how they made decisions was so foreign to them that even discussing it was almost impossible. So that has been a huge part of my career. But for those of you who are interested, I know that this is not a book that goes with most of your lives and not a thing that most people are interested in, but this is my book. It is on Amazon. And if you did want to go buy it, whether physical or an electronic copy, I would appreciate it very, very much. It is a great way to support me and the channel. And to go even farther, take a moment and give it a review. Their very technical books struggle to get reviews on Amazon, and when you do finally get one, often people are reviewing things that are not the book. They're reviewing things like the quality of the shipping or how well the condition was of the book when it was received, and they'll never actually read the book. And those who do, because it's a best practices, because it's extremely high level, it can be a challenge for people to even know what the book is really about. But I hope that somebody at least finds it interesting and valuable. But and I do know a number of viewers have it. But that is pretty much me. That is what I do abroad most of the time. I do a lot of little random things, so that's not everything that I do, but it is the vast majority, and gives you a fair idea of who I am as a career person, as a professional, and why I'm able to work from here. I manage teams that are located all throughout Latin America, and work with customers all through the United States, Canada, Western Europe. In the past, we've had customers in Mexico, Brazil, the Middle East, all over the world, and it's been a fantastic ride. And sometime maybe I'll tell some stories of the company. It's been really interesting working for yourself for a quarter of a century. Obviously, a lot of interesting things, good and bad and just wild, have happened over that time. I've gotten the chance to live all over the United States and in some cases around the world because of the job, where it actually took me there, and in some cases simply the job allowed me to live in all those places. And in many cases, it allowed me to work some really interesting full-time gigs during that time, because companies would come to my company to get me or to get resources. And so sometimes I got to do things you would never imagine, like going to Wall Street and working for the US Fed through the world's largest bank, all while being on Wall Street, all while going through my own company. So I got to really do some interesting stuff over the years. It's been a fantastic ride, and I look forward to the next 25 years for sure. And now here in Nicaragua, we're also getting back into hospitality things and other local investments as a way to give back, and things that we simply really appreciate business as its own thing. I have always loved business for business's sake. I think that it has a value and an intellectual, it's a form of intellectual pursuit, and one that I really appreciate. Thanks for joining me. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, you want to know about things in my career or how to get the book or anything else, pop down below, ask away, leave your comments. If you'd like to support the channel, like I said, buymeacoffee.com/ScottLMiller helps to make all this possible and justify all the expense and time that goes into it. And as always, share on social media, tell your friends about the show, and I will see all of you tomorrow.